versus 40 games, you might be able to kind of pull me in a little bit, but right now I think it's tough. You look at the games played, and then you look at the minutes, because Ja's playing more minutes than Zion because Zion's been on a minutes restriction. So between those factors, it's hard for me. But the thing that's interesting for me is that if you could take one of these two players, I would take Zion. I mean, I give Ja the Rookie of the Year, but the guy who I'd want is still Zion. I mean, when you watch him play, he's a force of nature out there. And I really genuinely do believe that you might end up getting proven right with your prediction in spite of all the games that he missed, because I think that the Pelicans, with the easiest schedule in the league, if I'm not mistaken, they have a real chance to push their way into the playoffs here. And if they do, we saw a little preview of it a couple weeks ago, I think, when the Lakers played the Pelicans, or that was last week. Since of time's
They
kind of
played
going
each.
out the
They
window.
played. No, they played each other twice, and LeBron showed that Father Time is not real.
Yeah, it's true, but I mean, Zion is looking like the next guy. I mean, there are moments where you can see Zion as one of the next faces of the league, and
Well,
imagining
you can
those two
make that
going head to
case for
head.
Ja as well, though. You can. You know what I'm saying? You can make that case for Ja as well. I just looked though, and while I did pick the Pels to make the playoffs, I looked at our Rookie of the Year predictions, and we both have Zion. But my caveat there was that if you missed extended time, R.J. Barrett. Once again, we shouldn't predict anything. Dead wrong.
Yeah, well, we should never
Dead wrong.
gamble again. That's pretty much the only
No,
rule.
Barrett's a nice player, but I don't know. I guess with Ja coming from a smaller school and didn't really expect him to put these numbers up, let alone the Grizzlies be good without having played Andre Iguodala 1 minute before they traded him. But no, it's an interesting race for sure. And do you think that whoever gets that 8th seed, I'm not counting Portland, but let's say Memphis misses the playoffs and the Pelicans overtake them in the standings, do you think that gets Zion more Rookie of the Year votes, or do you think they'll base it on the entire year?
I mean, for sure. I don't think he can make up the ground he's lost just from the missed games. Unfortunately, I think that's kind of going to be the nail in his coffin. But I mean, I think a lot of credit needs to go to Ja at the same time, and also because one of the reasons neither one of us picked Ja is that historically it's very hard for guys to come in and be impact players at the point guard position their rookie year. And if you're a Memphis fan, I think what you've got to be really encouraged by is that there have not been many guys who have played to that level their first year. And the guys who have, Jason, have been extraordinarily good players. Derrick Rose was just an absolute superb rookie. As a Bulls fan, I remember that very vividly. Chris Paul, might have heard of him. And the other guy more recently is John Wall. These are all all-star level guys, and if you're that good as a rookie in today's league as a point guard, which is probably the hardest position to learn, it bodes very well for your future career. So I think if you're Memphis, you kind of echo the words of LeBron James, say you got a real good one over there. So I mean, I think you've got to be really excited if you're Memphis, although I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs, Jason.
Well, they have a comfortable 3.5 game lead where you have Portland and New Orleans currently tied for the 9th seed. Portland's 2 percentage points better because they've played a couple more games than the Pelicans have. But it's going to be real interesting, and you can't discount the Kings or the Spurs either. Really, the only two teams out of it in the West are the Timberwolves and the Warriors. You got the Suns 6 games out, San Antonio 4 games out, Sacramento, New Orleans, and Portland all 3.5 games out. So it is going to be very, very interesting heading down the stretch. I mean, what else? Because we missed a while. So what else stands out for you here as we get close to our playoff push?
Well, the first thing is we have a special guest today, our third podcast host. Jason, do you want to introduce our special guest today?
Are you talking about my cat?
I'm talking about that ferocious feline right there.
Yeah, she's sick. She's 17, and she's been on heart meds for like 7 months because she was the runt of the litter, and she almost died. But we feed her heart meds twice a day, and she's like our little miracle. But she's a good girl. She's super attached to me. Basically, just lives in my bed.
Well,
You would think that the viewers are in on this right now, but yeah, no, she's a good girl.
yeah,
She's just
we
very
have to
vocal.
get a video podcast that you can really appreciate the true beauty of both this adorable cat and the owner cat bond that I'm witnessing right now. But getting back to basketball, I
Simba,
think
you
you're
just made your
absolutely right.
baseline jumper debut. Yes, good girl. See, she meows because she wants attention. I'm petting her. She's purring like a locomotive.
There you go. So you said
Say
it.
hi to Ben, Simba.
Wow, I'm clearly not wanted in that household. She's very jealous of the attention that you're giving to me. So with that said, though, Jason, the Western Conference playoffs, as you said, it is pretty wide open. I think on the other side, if we flip to the East, the team for me that's the most kind of interesting in the East now uh, has shifted to be the Sixers, who have become this sort of fascinating litmus test in numerous ways. We had this period where it was just the Ben Simmons show, and they had some pretty high highs, if you will. And now it's going to be the Embiid show for a little while. We don't know what's going on with Simmons. And meanwhile, the backdrop to all of this, Jason, is that this was the team that I picked to win it all, that many picked to win the East. And it's been an up and down and ultimately disappointing season for them. And now it's this possibility to watch this team slip down the standings right now, Jason. They have slipped. They're down to the 6th seed. Now, first of all, I want to say, do you think it's a bad thing for them to slip to the 6th seed? Would you rather be in the 6th seed at the moment with the way that the race is than in the 4-5 where you're going to have to play the Bucks in the second round? So let's start there. I mean, do you think it's a bad thing for this Sixers team to get the 6th seed, or is that a blessing in disguise that they can potentially avoid the Bucks?
I think as currently constructed, the Sixers are bound for a first round knockout. Unless somehow both the Pacers and Sixers jump to 4-5, I think the Sixers would beat Indiana. But right now, matched up against the Celtics, with the Celtics having home court advantage, with the way Boston's playing without Kemba Walker because he missed every game since the All Star break and he just came back against the Nets. But you have him playing well, Tatum, Brown, Horford, not Horford, Hayward. Yikes. Horford is on the Sixers. Basketball 101, Jason. Come on, buddy. But yeah, I don't think the Celtics are a good matchup at all for Philly. I don't know. I think the lower back problem with Simmons is tricky. I know Embiid's also in and out of the lineup, and then Brett Brown had to go and predict with a bunch of magazine outlets today that he's convinced that Simmons and Embiid will win a title together. I mean, in what reality? I know you have the Sixers winning the championship this year. Are you still confident in that decision?
I'm growing less confident. The team that I'm actually getting a little bit worried about are the Boston Celtics. I mean, I that's the team that's starting to kind of scare me if I'm any other team in the East, because the way Jason Tatum is playing and their ability to play this versatile style. And people might be saying, "Well, what do you mean by a versatile style?" So what I mean is this is one of the few teams in the league that when they play their best lineup, which by the way, Jason, their best lineup involves Marcus Smart. Let's stop kidding ourselves. They are the type of team that if they play their best lineup, they're playing no traditional big men out there. It's Smart, Hayward, Brown, Walker, Tatum. Point blank period. That's the lineup that's gonna win or lose them playoff games and playoff rounds for that matter. And with that lineup, they basically have 5 players who can switch and guard any position on the floor, with the exception of Kemba Walker. They have 4 of those 5 guys who can really switch up to a 4, down to a 1 defensively. And Kemba's kind of the only guy there who doesn't fit. It's actually sort of interesting to watch the Celtics play without Walker, because while Walker really helps their offense, defensively, when you see them play without Walker, they're an incredible team to kind of analyze because they become so versatile on that end of the floor. And it's funny to see that they lose to a team like Houston, where they strike you as kind of team that plays better when they're small. But that is the other piece here, Jason, that becomes really interesting. It doesn't look like the Celtics are going to end up with a big man, and they're probably the one team that I actually think would not want to play the Sixers. And I say that because with Embiid, it forces them away from their best lineups. And I think that could be a real problem for them. I don't think there's many big men in the league that force lineup decisions, but Embiid is absolutely positively one of them. He's a guy who could drop 30, 40 points on them in a playoff game if they
The
don't
problem
play a
is he can't
traditional
stay
big.
healthy. The problem is he can't stay healthy. He gets fatigued easily. He gets injured easily. And as great as the Sixers roster
Mm.
looked on paper, I mean, you were singing their praises. But the fact that Josh Richardson cannot stay in the lineup, Al Horford, first time in his career, Ben, he's really starting to show his age, and that's going to be a problem down the stretch. He barely starts anymore. He had a couple of DNP CDs to where Brown's not even playing them. They don't have much of a bench. It's looking like they should have kept Jimmy Butler over Tobias Harris. Look what Butler's doing in Miami with an actual culture. The Sixers do not have a championship culture. The Celtics do.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless
Mm-hmm.
whether or not the Celtics are a bona fide title contender this year, they're better off long term than Philly. I think Brett Brown's got to go, and they need to trade one of Simmons or Embiid and get players that are better fits for whoever stays.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with Brett Brown and what they do down the stretch. I mean, Josh Richardson has just, I mean, the story of this season, as much as we're talking about this, the first thing is, I just want to come out and say right now, anyone who's saying let's split up Simmons and Embiid, I don't know what you're looking at. Those two are
I'm
not
saying
the
that.
problem. They're
I'm,
not
I'm
the
saying that.
problem. They are not
Simmons
the
can't.
problem on this team. The problem
I'm
on this
sorry.
team is the fact that the other guys are not playing up to their standards. Tobias
I
Harris
don't.
has not
You're
been
wrong.
great. Josh
You're wrong.
Richardson has been look at the numbers. The numbers don't lie. Al Horford has had his worst season since, oh my goodness, I don't even know when. This is his worst season if you look past just if you look at the standard numbers, it's his worst season since probably his rookie year. If you look at the advanced numbers, it might be his worst season of his entire career. He just has not been great. Josh Richardson has not played well, and Tobias Harris. I mean, this is not about the two best players. Those two are all stars. They're top 20 players in the league. You don't trade top 20 players in their prime. You just don't do
Do
it.
you know how much better Joel Embiid would be if he had a point guard that could shoot? He'd see less double teams because players right now on defense are not respecting Simmons. Yeah, he's a gifted athlete. He could drive to the hole. He could dunk. But imagine Chris Paul, a younger version of Chris Paul on this team, or Steph Curry with Joel Embiid. There would be no way to double team anyone on the floor when you're able to space it like that. But you can't space the floor when you're Philly. Josh Richardson is probably the best shooter in the starting lineup, and he's been injured most of the season. He hasn't been 100% healthy. Harris has been streaky. They can't play Horford and Embiid together. Where's the championship formula here, Ben?
So that's the question that you ask is a good one. Where is the championship formula? The thing I don't agree with here is when people say let's trade one of these two guys because you're not
I
going to get equal return. You're not going to trade Embiid and get Nikola Jokic. Sure, if you could trade Embiid for Nikola Jokic, sure you'd do that. Even though I think Embiid's a better player than Jokic, sure you go
That's
to
why I'm
them and you
trading
say,
Simmons.
all
That's why
right,
I'm
you
trading Simmons.
you trade Simmons. You're not getting Steph Curry for Simmons. You're not getting that guy. No team is going to trade their A1 star for Simmons, not unless Simmons plays better than he is now. So this is the catch-22 that you get stuck in is, sure, you can trade Simmons, but you're going to have to trade him for 75 cents on the dollar at best, and then you're getting a worse player. Maybe he fits a little better, but you're no longer a championship contender because now you don't have two stars. You have one star and maybe an all-star. Maybe you can get an all-star back for Simmons, but I don't see it. That said, you're
I'm going
right.
to pose a really, really random trade for you right now.
Okay, hit me.
Ben Simmons to the Kings for De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield. Are the Sixers better?
You get both of those guys. I mean,
Both of those guys to make the salaries match because, well, no, Hield got money. So I think if you put in Fox's rookie scale with Hield's salary, it should match what Simmons is making because Simmons is on a max deal.
the first thing is I don't think the Kings do that. I don't think the Kings do.
Do you put anything past Vlade Divac?
That's true. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Or
If
Vivek
you're
Ranadive? I love saying that name.
if you're the Sixers, that's pretty interesting. I mean, I can't lie. That's a pretty interesting trade. I mean, Buddy Hield and De'Aaron Fox, you're still getting a potential All-Star in Fox and a better fit in Hield. I might take that. I mean, defensively you're losing a lot, but you still getting beat. I mean, I might do that. I mean, that would be a
I'll give you
pretty
another
good
one.
one.
Patty Mills and DeMar DeRozan for Ben Simmons.